back. Thank you for joining us. We are stepping into a new sermon series called The Battle in Your Mind. And John, I feel like we had a lot of good topics in our last series that we talked about.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And I wanted to bring this up today. So my mom actually was talking about taking all the weeds out of the front lawn.
Oh, yeah?
And our neighbor came over and he was like, the only way that you can take all these weeds out is if you till the ground.
Wow.
Or you can torch it. He's like, but I wouldn't recommend torching.
Till or torch.
Yeah.
That's the next sermon.
Till or torch. So
Till or torch.
I just wanted to bring that up to you. So you were right about all that.
That's great.
But no, yeah, we're stepping into a new sermon series, and I'm very excited about this topic today. We're talking about fighting the strongholds. And so, John, what does that mean when we talk about the battle in our mind and just fighting that?
It's really, the reality is we're in this really important and violent battle 24/7. I mean, we're in this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is a battle for our mind. It's you think about it, we get ideas, suggestions from the world, from the news, from people, from our family, from our friends, from Satan, and all this stuff's coming at our mind, and some of that stuff sticks.
Yeah.
And it becomes a stronghold, an idea, and the idea of that is just that, if whatever gets your mind is going to get you. And so the Bible's real big on renewing your mind, having the right mind, have the mind of Christ, all these kind of things. It's a lot of verses. I think there's something like 3,000 verses in the Bible about your mind.
Wow.
So it's a big battleground. And I think it's important when we talk about mental health, when we talk about we all go through this. I mean, we all go through different thoughts and different fears to a real deep level.
Yeah. You talked about several scriptures. Is there one that just kind of comes to mind when you
talk
about
I think what I'd like to do in the podcast the next several weeks, and we'll do this in the sermon series also, is to just look at some of those key verses that I just mentioned. Well, one of them is 2 Corinthians 10, 3-5. So let me just read it. It says, "For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does." In other words, it's not going to be tanks and bombs and that kind of stuff. "The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. And on the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds." And so that's where they get this idea of a stronghold, that there's some things that can come into our mind that become what you would call a stronghold. The word means a fortress or, some kind of fortified place. But the idea is something you have in your mind gone with that is not God's truth. Mm-hmm. And you've got to fight the battle to defeat that stronghold.
Yeah. I feel like the church is just now would you agree that the church is just now kind of touching on these topics of that were kind of like taboo or foreign?
Yeah.
And so when you say stronghold, can we just dive in a little bit on that word, just a little bit for the listener?
Yeah. So I think what we're talking about, in definition, dictionary is like what I said earlier. It's kind of like it's a fort or it's a fortress or whatever. But here it's talking about this kind of mental battle that you're in that can be all kind of things. And so let me unpack that a little bit, because as I was doing the blog, it really helped me to kind of put it down in the blog, because I thought, oh yeah, that's a stronghold. So some of it's like two main categories, I think. One of them's a worldview, and this is with like atheism. Mm-hmm. I mean, atheism is, hey, I believe there is no God, and that affects all the rest of your mind. If that's in your mind that there is no God, well, I'm going to react different ways to different situations. There's materialism. Yeah. If having stuff's the most important thing, and that's in my mind, man, how I treat people, how I treat situations. So one of those strongholds can be how you view the world.
Gotcha.
So philosophy maybe, but it's not just I think this, but it's what you're living. And the second one is a personal attitude. For example, worry or bitterness or insecurity. It's where we buy into the what ifs.
I got you.
I mean, I think it's going to be some sort of what if. And it's really interesting because the Bible very clearly in that passage and other places say you got to tear those down.
Yeah.
You got to tear them down, and you got to fight the battle and destroy those.
I like what you said. It's not actually like a physical fight, but it's more spiritual. So would you say it's a thought that just occupies,
Yeah,
like,
it can
constantly?
occupy. So let me ask you. All right. So have you ever had one of those where you get like even going to almost like a panic attack because you start thinking, and it starts dominoing, and you start,
Oh yeah.
you've maybe you've heard it, or maybe you say it to yourself. Like, have you ever had that happen?
Oh yeah. Like I'm a worry. What do they say? Worry ward or something like that.
Worry wart.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it's like it's like what you said. It's like a spiral effect, and
Yeah.
people will be like, "Hey, like you're spiraling. Like just calm down. Like,
Mm,
well, what if
yeah.
this happens? What if that happens?" So that makes a lot of sense, though. That could be kind of more like a stronghold that's just constantly there, and you gotta
Yeah.
work through it. Another word. I don't know if this is like a churchy word, but we've also talked about taking every thought captive,
Right.
and you've said
Right.
that too.
Yeah.
And so, what does that mean? Taking every thought
Well,
captive.
it's real interesting because it's taking every thought captive to make it obedient to Christ.
Okay.
And so, to me, I think we're getting toward now the solution of what Scripture says of what we're supposed to do is okay. When we're spiraling, when we got these strongholds, when we got these lies, somebody says, "Hey, God could never love somebody like you." Hey, I believe that. God could never forgive me. I mean, all those would be strongholds. You make it captive to Christ, which is truth. It's going to be
Mhm.
God's truth. And so I think part of the answer here is always going to be to say, all right, fight this battle, but then connect it to the truth of Christ's word, of the Bible, of God's truth. And so we take it captive, we defeat it by holding it up against truth.
Ah, that's good. That's good. What is if someone were to come to you, John, and I know this is going to help me too because in the line of work we're in, people come to us all the time.
Sure.
What is one thing that you can point someone to if they're fighting this spiritual battle? And again, it's not flesh and blood, but it's this thing that's going on in their mind. What would you tell them?
Yeah, I want to share in the podcast the next several weeks several of these principles, and we got time for one of them today. And the first one I want to share is basically this: don't believe everything you think, because truly we all have this. We all have mental
Yeah,
health issues.
yeah.
Okay, you
I'm
know,
glad you're saying that.
I
Yeah.
remember somebody saying, one of the counselors I think that we've had at the church before said it in an interview, and I really struck me. And she said, just like you go to the doctor for your physical health, you need to be checking out your mental health.
Right.
It's just the same. And we all have mental health issues. We all have physical potential issues that we
Sure.
have to deal with. But I think you cannot believe everything you think. And we think it's true because we thought it. Well, it must be true if I thought it. But it really is not. I mean, it's buying into a suggestion maybe from Satan or from the world or from sin.
Hmm.
And we all have this amazing capacity to fool ourselves.
Yeah.
We can see what we want to see. I mean, I'm always amazed at those deals where they have like some event happens, the police get involved. There's an accident, for example. Police have 4 people that were standing on the corner. Hey, what'd you see? And it's 4 different stories. It's like 4 different stories. Or I remember a lot of the mystery shows that are on TV. They run across something and they go, "What did it look like to you?" Well, they thought it was something else
Hmm.
because that's just what they're used to. So it's kind of that we see what we want to see,
Hmm.
and we got to make sure, I'm thinking that, but I got to disbelieve that.
Yeah.
I got to not go with that at all.
Yeah. Do you find that that's true though? Because most people, I think, will struggle with that. Going, well, I just thought that. I like what you said. I thought that maybe that is true. Maybe I am a person. Maybe I do want that. But there also is scripture that points to the enemy throwing fiery darts at you,
Right.
and you're in a constant war.
Right.
And so, I mean, would you agree with that? That not everything is from us. I know that we have a sinful nature, but it could be the enemy.
Yeah, definitely so. And I think one of the things is to realize that we can't just buy into it because we had that thought.
Hmm.
Doesn't make it true. It doesn't make it real. It just is a thought, and sometimes we just got to walk away from it. We cannot believe everything we think. And so, 2 suggestions to the listener today. The first is to identify a stronghold.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd encourage everybody who's listening to this to just say, okay, what's your stronghold? I think we all got one.
Yeah.
We've all got some things that's like, I'm always been scared of this, or I've always said this to myself, or I've always thought this that somebody said to me a long time ago, or whatever. Identify the stronghold. And then I think what this passage leads us to is then find God's truth and shine the light of that on that lie.
That's so good.
And then you got to shine the light on it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it happens in all kind of areas. I'll never forget, I was having a conversation with one of my friends, and I was sharing with her about just some of my own struggles. And she had this scar, and she said, well, I always feel like people think this about me because of that scar. They always think it's ugly, or they always think weird things about me. And I went, what scar? Mm. She goes, well, this one right here. Oh, I don't even notice that anymore. But in her mind,
yeah,
it's the first thing and the only thing people noticed. But I'd known her long enough, I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
So it just shows how our mind just takes us down paths that are just kind of destructive and kind of goofy and hurtful.
Yeah,
basically,
absolutely.
In a lot of ways.
Well, Pastor John, thank you so much. I love, and I think that's just what we can end with today. Don't believe everything you think. And I'm excited, and I know that you said that you have other principles that we're going to be going throughout this sermon series. So, John, thank you so much. To the listener, thank you for listening. We have a great topic for you these upcoming weeks, and we hope to see you next time. God bless.